Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. Today's Lies. Hi everyone, welcome back. My name is Ahtiya, and today we are going to do my April wrap-up, so all the books that I read during the month of April. Before I get started, I'm going to read you some stats once I get my phone out. And let me know, do you like seeing the stats, or can I leave the stats out? I find them interesting personally, but I don't know if you find that interesting. So, alright, it's coming up, month of April. So, in the month of April, I read 4 fantasy, 1 science fiction, 6 contemporary. I had a very contemporary heavy month. 1 romance, 1 poetry collection for a total of 13 things. I gave 1 book 2.5 stars, 4 books 3.5 stars, 5 books 4 stars, 2 books 4.5 stars, and 1 book 5 stars. I read a total of 3,915 pages, and in terms of age breakdown, 11 of those were young adult and 2 were YA. So April was I don't want to say it was a meh month, but I was feeling kind of meh with my reading. As you saw, I had 4 3.5 stars, which that's not a bad rating. I've just had other months where I've had they're mostly 4 stars. So 4 stars and 3.5 stars are kind of tied in a way. I wish I had more 4.5 stars or more 5 stars, but whatever. We're just gonna jump into it. The first book that I finished during the month of April was a poetry collection. This is Drive Here and Devastate Me by Megan Falley. She's a queer poet, and this basically chronicles a relationship, or rather the end of the relationship and what led to that. And you know going in that it chronicles the end of a relationship. This was just so good. This was, as you can see, I tabbed my favorite poems. Let me see if I can find one of my favorites to just read. Alright. So this is from the poem Mirror Mirror. You don't have to pass kindergarten to know the playground is not level. When the first September morning, the teacher begins the roll call by saying, "I might butcher your name this first day," as if she won't slaughter the un-American names for the rest of the year. Here in America, we like our names apple pie and pro-gun. We like them easy on the tongue. Picture a black mother telling a teacher, "If you don't call my kid a princess, they're dropping out of school." Imagine their empty desk and growling prison bed. The system only built to support some of us to be whatever we want when we grow up. This was a really good, I'm tempted to read it over again. I feel like I say that about a lot of books, but I highly recommend this. I really enjoyed it, and I ended up giving it 4 stars. Next, we have something that's been on my TBR for quite a while, and that is Me and Earl and the Dying Girl by Jesse Andrews. This is about a boy. Why can't I never remember protagonists' names? Greg. This is about Greg. Starting senior year, he's flying under the radar just the way he likes it. He has this one best friend, Earl, and then an old friend of his, you find out via his mother that an old friend of his is dying of cancer. And so his mom is like, you should get back in touch with her. And so he does, because she's dying, and they form this really awesome friendship, and it kind of just chronicles that. It's really touching, really funny, really heartwarming, a little sad, you know, I mean, yeah. There was some so the N-word is used in here, right? Greg's best friend, Earl, is black, but the author of this book is a white man. And so when it first popped up, right, I had to go back a couple pages, and I was like,
is Earl black?
Or is he not? And he is, right? That's explicitly stated, that comes up. And then I went back and I was like,
is Jesse Andrews black?
And he's not, right? So I really, that sits weird with me. That really sits weird with me, because the N-word wasn't needed to be typed out by some white male author. I just didn't, I don't know, that felt weird to me. I didn't appreciate that. I didn't like that. I initially rated it 4 stars, but I don't know, like, rethinking about it, I'm kind of just like, why was that needed? And of course, it's going to be different than a book like, let's say, Dear Martin, which I read a couple months ago, or, you know, Tyler Johnson Was Here, or On the Come Up, where it's written about Black students from the perspective of Black students by Black authors. So yeah, that's just like a thing to, that's like a note about this one that I was just like, could have done without it. So the next book that I attempted to read, actually DNF'd, and that is The Education of Margot Sanchez. I don't have it with me anymore because I unhauled it, so it's in a box ready to go to the library. So I'll put a nice little picture right here. This is about this girl who is, she's Latina. She goes to this really preppy, really rich white school. She lives in the Bronx, which was really cool just to have a story take place in a neighborhood that I'm very familiar with. And before the story starts, she gets in trouble for like running up her parents' credit card bill because she's trying to fit in with her group of friends. And I got 50 pages in, and it's a contemporary. So the first 50 pages can tell you a lot about a contemporary book. I got 50 pages in, and I just could not stand the main character. She was so spoiled, entitled, bratty. And there's a difference between making a character like that in the beginning so that they can grow later on in the story, and just like piling on all these negative attributes. Like, there was nothing that made me want to continue it. You know, the whole aspect of it being in a familiar neighborhood was cool, and at one point I was like, I'm gonna keep reading because like this is semi-familiar with me, but I was annoyed with her the entire time. So I DNF that at whatever percent 50 pages is in that book. So yeah. The next book I read during the month of April was Once and Future, which is co-written by Amy Rose Capetta and Corey McCarthy. This is a good story, right? Let me give you the premise. So this is a gender-bent, queer retelling, futuristic space retelling of the lore of King Arthur, right? So King Arthur is being reincarnated. This is like the 248th time or 247th time that King Arthur has been reincarnated, and this is the first time that it is a girl, Ari. And so you kind of follow that storyline and what happens to King Arthur. I will say that I watched a video on the lore of King Arthur just so I like went in with some knowledge to see how it connected. I enjoy the representation in terms of racially and gender spectrum, sexuality, and things like that. But the writing itself, like the plot, was a bit lackluster for me, especially in the beginning. And when I say the beginning, like, it just lacked a lot of world building in the beginning. The beginning starts off like you hit the ground running with it, but there's a lack of world building where it takes too long into the story for you to begin, at least for me to begin imagining the world and the systems of the world. And I just wanted more mature writing, especially because I know that one of the authors, Amy Rose Capetta, has like a bunch of other books out. I'm not sure about the other author, but I believe that they do. And I don't know, I mean, for two writers who then come together and they're partners in real life, which is funny, I just wanted more mature writing. Not mature in terms of content, and mature in terms of development. I will say though that like after the first 75 pages, it picks up and it gets better, but it doesn't get so much so better that it's like, wow, you really made up for the first 75 pages. Like, there's this plot point, this like quest or whatever that they go on, and it happens and you have like at least 100 pages left. And I found that there was no, like, the plot point kind of just dropped. Like, the quest was over, and that was the main driving plot point of the entire book, was this one quest. And then they do it and they complete it, and then it's just like, meh. You know, they do other stuff, but they built up that one plot point and that one quest, and then when you reach the end of it, it's not as satisfying as you would have wanted it to be, because they spend the entirety of the book, most of it, talking about it. So yeah, I ended up giving this a 3.5 stars. Not bad, just I wanted a little bit more, which is why it's not a 4. And it's a duology, so I will be finishing the duology when the sequel comes out in, I believe, sometime in 2020. Next up, we have Josh and Hazel's Guide to Not Dating by Christina Lauren. They're like slowly becoming one of my favorite authors. And so this is about Josh and Hazel. they kind of like are acquaintances via Josh's sister and Hazel's best friend, and they don't know this until they come to a party, but they went to college together, and Hazel had these really embarrassing experiences in front of Josh, and she's quirky, she's out there, she's just really like herself, and Josh is very much like grounded in reality and blah blah blah. And so something happens where Hazel, okay, well, my laundry's done. Hazel has to move in with Josh periodically, or not periodically, for a period of time, and they decide that they're gonna set each other up on these dates because they both want to get out and experience life and all that. And they keep setting each other up on these horrible dates, and there's tension and there's chemistry, and it's just like, it's a romance if you couldn't tell. But I just really loved it, and I ended up giving this a very strong 4 stars. Next up is The Princess and the Fangirl by Ashley Poston. This is the second book in the Once Upon a Con world, so the first one being Geekerella, and this is the second one. And this is a modern day retelling of The Prince and the Pauper. And can we just admire how shiny that is and how awesome this is? And so, okay, if you've read Geekerella, this makes sense. But one of the side characters from Geekerella, Jessica Stone, who plays Princess Amara, who in this world is like, in my head, I liken her to Princess Leia of Star Wars, even though she's not, and even though they have Star Wars in this world. Yikes. But that's kind of just like to where your head needs to be at for that one. But she doesn't want to play the part, which you find out in Geekerella, like, you know. And then you have Imogen, who loves this character and really wants to get her back on the show, and they are like lookalikes of each other, and Jessica Stone is being blackmailed, and so they switch places so Jessica Stone can try and find this person. And it was just really nice, really cute. I enjoyed this more than Geekerella. My main gripe with Geekerella was the I'm not like other girls syndrome. I just for a very long time I could not stand the main character. But what I do appreciate about this one is that one of the characters in here calls out that type of behavior. So I feel like the author kind of realized what they were doing in Geekerella after it had already gone to print, or maybe that was a major critique in it. And then they kind of commented on it and critiqued that inside this book, which I really appreciated. It's incredibly socially aware. I love the world that's being created. I'm excited for the next book. The next book was actually announced. I don't know if there's a title, there may be, but it's going to be a Beauty and the Beast retelling. So I am super excited. I love anything Beauty and the Beast. And I gave this one 4 stars. Next up, we have Eden Conquered, which is the conclusion to the Dividing Eden duology. This one directly follows the events of the first book, so I can't talk much about it. But basically what happens in the first book is that you have a set of twins who are prince and princess to this kingdom. They have an older brother who is the crown prince, and then one day while the crown prince and the king are away, they are murdered. And so now the kingdom is left without an apparent heir, and because no one is alive, no one who was there at the time of their birth is alive to say which one of them was born first, they have to compete for the title of monarch. And that's what happens in the first one and some other stuff. This was really disappointing. I can't even sugarcoat this. I wanted more from this conclusion. There are a lot of choices made, especially about the main female character, that I personally don't agree with. I gave this a 2.5. I don't really give books 2.5 stars. I really don't, you know. And so I wanted more from this. I wanted so much more from this. I really enjoyed the first book. Like, I think I literally have 3 notes for this, right? I was so hyped for this. My first note is ending sucked. Journey was okay. And some parts felt rushed. We're moving on. Next, I read The Wicked King by Holly Black. This is the second book in the Folk of the Air trilogy. This follows the events happening that happened in The Cruel Prince. And so The Cruel Prince, you have this girl, Jude, who's human. She has a twin sister who's also human. She has a half-sister who's half human, half fae. She lives with her father, and it's just like Jude wants to get into politics because she's tired of being considered weak. And the whole Cruel Prince is her manipulating the court to solidify like her place in it. And I really enjoyed this. I enjoyed the tension. I enjoyed the chemistry between Jude and Carden, because it's not the typical YA romance like, oh my god, I'm so like, no, it's they hate each other, but they're into each other. And it's just like, that is such an interesting and complex dynamic. And the build-up between these two characters is exceptional. I can applaud any author who crafts character relationships that are so complex and so dynamic. Because even if the rest of your plot sucks, not saying that this does, but even the rest of your plot sucks, I will keep reading to find out what happens between your characters. I'm a character-driven reader, I feel like. You know what I mean? I like good plots. I love good plots, but I'm very much a character-driven reader. And the world building is just spectacular. She expands so much on the world, so much on a lot of the different characters, and you don't feel like just because Jude is the main character and you're getting her perspective, and I can't really call him a love interest, but you have Carden. It's not just their characters that are developed. You have a lot of other characters that are also highly developed, and I really appreciate that. Alright, next up, I read The Past and Other Things That Should Stay Buried by Sean David Hutchison. This is my first Sean David Hutchison book. I've heard a lot about him. People talk about his books all the time on BookTube. This was the one that grabbed my attention the most. And it's also a new release, but the premise grabbed my attention the most. And you follow... I really don't remember people's names. You follow Dino and his ex-best friend... July dies suddenly, and his family owns not a morgue but a funeral home, so they're responsible for preparing, you know, corpses essentially. And so his family is tasked with preparing the corpse of his ex best friend until she like rises from the dead while he's doing her makeup, but she's not alive, but she's also not quite dead, and it's just them navigating through how to complete whatever cycle it is she's supposed to complete, but also what happened to their friendship and why did it end, and you know, can they get some closure, can they not? I enjoyed it. I gave this a 3.5 stars. I wanted a little bit more from the book, I will admit. It's a bit on the short side, which I didn't mind. I think you can pack a lot into a smaller book. I found both characters like insufferable at some points. Like there were some points they were being insufferable together, and then there were some points where they were being insufferable but like separately. And I was just like, I understand why you all got tired of each other, because you suck. And like in the beginning of the book, July sucks, like full stop. Dino wallows in self-pity. The beginning of the book is a bit repetitive. They seem to have the same conversation over and over again in regards to her being half dead and half alive. But I will say, as the book progresses, there's a lot of character development. I will say that there is queer rep in here because Dino, one of the main characters, is gay and he has a boyfriend, so that's pretty cool. And I don't know, I am unsure whether or not I'll pick up another Sean David Hutchison book. I do really like this cover. I don't know. I've been thinking about it. If I move to do so, I will let you know. Next up, we have a small book that definitely packs a punch, and that is Girls on the Verge by Sharon Biggs Waller. This book follows a girl. What are names? Camille. She's pregnant. She lives in the state of Texas. And she does not want to continue the pregnancy. She wants to terminate it. She wants to get an abortion. And it chronicles her kind of road tripping with her best friend and another acquaintance of hers through Texas. And then through all these different places, just as a journey, so that she can terminate this pregnancy that she knows full well she does not want. And it's a commentary on women's rights, women's right to choose, and just how like hard it is in some states, in particular Texas in this one, how hard it is for women to get proper care and to make their own choices, and what this teenager has to go through just to be in control of her body. I really enjoyed it. I would highly recommend. The characters were great, the character development was great. It's funny, it jumps right into the story, which I also appreciated. The use of flashbacks is also done really well. Some stories can like use flashbacks and you're like, why couldn't you just kind of summarize this for me in a paragraph? But I really enjoyed the way that flashbacks were used to inform present day Camille's reactions and thoughts and memories. And it's an excellent portrayal of female friendship as well. And I can't remember if I said it, but I gave it a 4.5 stars. Next up, we have Ruin and Rising by Leigh Bardugo. This is the third and final book in the Grisha trilogy. So there's other books in the Grisha universe, but this is the Grishaverse, rather. This is the last one in the Grisha trilogy, so I can't really tell you what this one's about. I will say, so Shadow and Bone follows the girl Alina. They live in this place where you have this, like, subset of people called Grisha, and they have, like, abilities or whatever. And Alina thinks she's just some regular person. Turns out she's not. Duh. And so the trilogy kind of chronicles her learning about her powers, learning about her abilities, and trying to, like, save the country and the land that she grew up on, so which is really cool. I liked this one. I enjoyed it. I didn't like the ending at all, which I feel like is kind of a theme for this month. There's a lot of great character development in the character of Mal, who I despised in the second book. I just did not like Mal as a character. I didn't like him as any kind of love interest ever. So there's a lot of great character development for him in this book, but I really despise the ending. I will say, though, that this made me very excited for the Six of Crows duology and then also the King of Scars duology, especially because one of the main characters in this King of Scars duology is heavily prominent in not this book but in Siege and Storm, and I absolutely love that character, so I cannot wait. And I ended up giving this 4 stars. 3 more to go. Next up, we have Night Music by Jen Marie Thorne. This follows, let me see if I can remember their names. Is his name Ollie? Is it Oliver? Oscar. Yeah. Oscar and Ruby. Yes, okay. So as you can tell by the cover, Oscar is black and Ruby is white. And so it takes place in New York City, the classical world of New York City. Oscar is like this prodigy. He is super talented composer, and Ruby's dad is a super talented conductor, and he takes Oscar on kind of as his mentee in a way, like directly as his mentee. Oscar ends up living in Ruby's like apartment type thing, whatever, in the city, and they start forming a relationship. There's so much character development, there's so much commentary on race and class and privilege and economic privilege as well, even within race, and the expectations and stereotypes and just navigating being black in a white space. It takes place in the perspective of Ruby, like just Ruby. And in the beginning, I was like, I kind of want Oscar's perspective as well. I wouldn't have minded a back and forth between the two. But as you go on and you learn about the character of Oscar, I realized that it wasn't really necessary because the character of Oscar is so well crafted to be just very open. You know, at no point are you wondering what Oscar is thinking because he's just so forthcoming with the information. And this is a great look into how you can be a white woman, be an ally, like a true ally, and I like how Ruby challenges herself to do that for Oscar, and it's framed like a romance. I feel like it's marketed as a romance, but I looked at it as so much more than a romance. It is so much like, it is so very much Ruby's like coming of age story and development, and she goes through so much, she changes so much in deciding who she wants to be and how can she get out of the shadow of her parents, and just like there's so much that goes on and so much that happens. The romance is cute. It's a thickums book, you know, it's a little thickums, but I loved every second of it. It's just, you know, when something feeds your soul, that's what this book did for me. I didn't expect it to do that, but that's what it did for me, and I ended up giving this a 4.5 stars. I wrote so many notes. Like that, if I write a lot of notes, it either means it was really good or like I have a lot of critiques. But usually if I don't have a lot of notes, that's not a good thing. What I also like about the romance in this is that there's no unnecessary roadblocks. I feel like there's so many romance novels where they throw in an unnecessary roadblock that could be solved with communication, clear communication, and just maturity, and there's none of that in here, you know? There's a part where they argue. It's frustrating because like this is a young adult book, but you have some adult romance novels where a couple can argue and it's like, oh my god, are we gonna break up? And it's like, like sis, you argued, like it's okay. It's okay. So there was so much about this, and I don't know, it might be a 4.5, it might be a 5 stars. I don't know. Now I'm like toggling back and forth. Next up, I finally read Tyler Johnson Was Here by J. Coles. And so this follows, you have Marvin, who is a twin. Tyler Johnson is his twin, and it goes missing, and then you find out that he was shot and killed by a police officer. And so Marvin has to come to grips with that. He has to learn to live in the world without his brother. He has to come to grips with the fact that their relationship was changing, not in a bad way, but it was just changing. It's a great exploration of grief. Their father is in jail, but you get so much of the wisdom and so much of the character of the father through the use of the letters that the father writes them from, or writes Marvin from jail. There's a lot of character in Marvin. There's a lot of character in his two best friends. It was just a really great time. I was expecting a different ending, but I'm not unsatisfied with the ending that I got. It was very... I don't even want to say anymore because I don't want to, like, potentially spoil it, but I really enjoyed it, and I really enjoyed this book, and I'm sad that it took me so long, but I'm very glad that I finally read it, and I gave it 4.5 stars. Alright, last book that I read in the month of April was, oh my god, I just flung that, Ruse by Cindy Pon. This is the conclusion to the Want duology. I read Want last year at some point, I think. Was I still at school when I read it? I don't know. I definitely read it in 2018. I don't even know. Whatever. I read it in 2018. I enjoyed it. It's this like semi-future. Well, it is futuristic. They live in China, and the pollution and the smog has gotten so bad. And I'm telling you what happens in Ruse. It's gotten so bad. There are these suits. Jason and his friends want to kind of disrupt the capitalistic overlord person that's in their like universe or whatever, and they kind of do that, but there's a lot of consequences to that, and all the while Jason is getting involved with that dude's daughter. There's a lot. I enjoyed this conclusion, but I kind of wanted more from it, which I feel like is a theme of April, me reading the continuations of series or the conclusions of series and then being meh. I don't appreciate that, you know? If you're gonna end a series, like, end it, please. I will say I really like the beginning. The beginning of the book is an overlapping with the end of Want, because it gives you the perspective of another character while the happenings of the end of Want are going on, which I really appreciated. I felt like the climax of the book happened way too quick, and it just felt rushed and corny, and I was just like, you built us up to all of this, and then poof, it's over in like a couple pages. I don't know. I just wanted more. But yeah, I mean, still a solid book and still a solid duology. And I gave it 3.5 stars. Alrighty, here's some of the books I read in the month of April. Ooh, this hurts. Yeah, this is like half of them because I read 13. So this is 7. This is half. Yeah, tell me, have you read any of these books? Did you enjoy them? What were your thoughts? Are you looking forward to any of the books that I mentioned in my wrap-up? If you liked this video, make sure you give it a huge thumbs up. Comment down below, please. Make sure you share with all your bookish friends. If you have not subscribed already, you should. And if you haven't pressed the notification bell already, you should, so that you're notified every time I post a new video. Make sure you check me out on all of my social media, including Goodreads and Instagram at BookinItWithAhtiya. And I will see you in the next video. Bye.